Why, hello everyone. This is going to be quite a new attempt at things. I have for you today, I'll be working on it down here, hopefully you'll see it on your screens, Heather and Jan, on something new and experimental. I apologize for the delay in thinking about what I wanted to do next, but I've tried to be proactive in thinking about what would truly be helpful to people. I've seen things like manuscripts and translations be controversial. And it so frustrates me because it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be at all. In fact, we have this treasure trove of things preserved in manuscripts over the centuries. And I see them and I get so excited. I think it's so cool to look at these old manuscripts. And I want other people to be able to as well. So I have started to work on some things, but I'm starting here. What I've done for you today is I found P46. And what I have for you here is Romans 12:1, and this is dated to 180 to 200 AD, and I'm going to break this down. What I have up here for you is the Berean Standard Bible. It's a public domain translation. It's available on biblehub.org, and it begins, "Therefore I urge you," and I have down here P46, which is from about close to the year 200 is where scholars are dating it to. And here's your word parakalo for I urge is where BSB is getting that. Here's your therefore, amakran upsilon nu. And then this is the plural y'all, if you're from the south. And then we have the brothers. So, therefore I urge you, brothers. And we can say that is a very good translation. Again, you can compare. I've tried to hand transcribe this so that it looks like P46. So you can actually go to. I'm doing this because I want you to be able to go to yourself to Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts.org, csntm.org, and you can observe these verses for yourself and see just how little has changed between now and then. Let's continue through. So they translated on account of by dia, this word dia, they translated on account of. Sometimes dia will be translated through or by, and on account of is a great way of translating it. And then we have of the mercies of God. And on account of God's mercy. So they've sort of melded these two together. Nice way of thinking about it in English. On account of God's mercy. Now notice this. This is God or of God. And what we have here is just two letters. You notice this theta looking thing and this upsilon looking thing. Again, it's probably different than the handwriting that you learned in your Greek class, if you've taken any Greek classes. But there's the potential that this was a Christian copyist because you have two letters, and much like the Hebrews revered the Tetragrammaton, and they wouldn't actually say it, and they'd write it, such that even the pronunciation today is this big debate. You have two letters here and a line above it. We'll see it one more time, and this is extremely faded in P46, but you can faintly see the line if you look at this manuscript. And you will see theta and omega. Now, why upsilon here and omega down here? Well, we'll get to that. The spelling changes, but here we have God's mercy instead of God instead of a to God idea, and so that's why one would end in upsilon and the other would end in omega. Omega would be the dative to God. Let's go to the next spot there. So again, it's amazing, we're going fairly word for word here, and you'll notice that not a whole lot is being lost. There is a textual variant that's coming up that I will discuss, but let's get through this verse first. This is the word to, BSB has to offer, or to present, to set it forth, parastesai. By the way, I'm going to update my Greek pronunciation to modern, hopefully this year. I learned Erasmian because that's what everybody does in seminary. That ain't how they talked, okay? There weren't any sounds. And actually, one of the textual variants that will come in here is a spelling variant, and I postulate that it has to do with the pronunciations have to do with the spelling differences. And so that's an idea. Some of you guys out there can let me know what you think. So the last little bit of this line, this is a iota here. I thought it was a line that they drew in, but that's parastesai. And then this is a plural neuter, the bodies, and then the bodies of you all. So your bodies. And let's go to the next spot here. This is thusion, zotan. So thusion is the sacrifices, and living. The as is implied. Then we move on. 1 second. Here's a word for holy. Holy. There may be some space here where, maybe Kai was there in the manuscript, but we don't have it here in P46. And the others as well. I'm going to look downward. In fact, the Byzantine manuscripts as well looks like they also don't have a Kai. It's just a holy, acceptable to God, holy, pleasing to God. So pleasing is this word here. Pleasing. And here is our to God as opposed to the of God or God's mercy. We have pleasing to God. So that's why, again, the spelling change. Then we have the logical or the reasonable. This is logikein, which I think eventually I'm going to end up pronouncing this as din logikein. Din logikein is probably how I'm going to end up pronouncing that eventually. Some translations will have the idea of reasonable, this logikein, but in context, you could also talk about this as being a spiritual service of worship, which is what you have here in the Berean Standard Bible. This is the idea, latrian is your idea of the act of worship, and then this is of you all. It's faded. Here we can't quite tell what this letter is, but based on what we know of grammar, probably what was there before there was a little scratch is the omega. And so, but all you'll be able to technically see on there is that. Now, I wanted to point out this so far as the word oiktirmon. As I hand transcribed this is what I thought was an eta. However, there is a resource that I have in my Logos, and the way he transcribes P46 as looking, he has it as this, eta iota. And also, if you have a modern Greek pronunciation or Koine, whatever, also that would be the E sound there as well. There are different spellings of this, and depending on if eta itself sounds that way, if I also looked at the manuscript again, and it's like, oh, I kind of could see space for an eta and a iota. So Philip Comfort might be correct in that, how he's transcribed that. I am more than willing to be wrong because this is my first crack at transcribing. But if you look, at first time I thought it was an eta, but this is curved, and the way that you generally see eta, like down here, I can see why maybe he is saying that it's something like this with the iota really close by. So even looking at that manuscript, you might be able to, maybe you agree with Philip Comfort and disagree with my hand transcribing, which is totally okay with me, by the way. I have terrible handwriting anyway, as you can see with this. I was saying that for this word for living, it almost looks like a T, but because it's curved as it is, it actually matches the C, which is the S Greek zosan. It's the word for living. So zosan is probably what we have there. But so far as this sound up here with oiktirmon, just like we have different spellings in English, if you go back in English and you have different spellings for the same word, I'm wondering if that happens to some extent in the Greek manuscripts as well. And so you could have an eta iota here, but if you look at most modern Hebrew Bibles, what you'll see here is actually just a iota. The eta will not be in there. So for example, let me take you to a resource down here. This is also a public domain resource, the Solid Rock Greek New Testament. Stephen Brown, who's actually my brother-in-law, is part of putting this together. I should have brought the book with me so that you could see it. But this is a tremendous resource. He talks about the variants. He prefers a Byzantine text, but he mentions the variants that are in the Society of Biblical Literature. He mentions the variants of Nestle Aland. He mentions Scrivener's 1550 TR. And so he'll talk about the variants that are there. In fact, you can see down here, here's the big variant here in all the manuscripts. So the Byzantine priority, F35, which I don't know a lot about yet, but I'll learn more about that. Scrivener's 1550, several other manuscripts here, Nestle Aland 2728, the NIV, actually agreeing with the TR here, goodness, heaven's sakes. And then Society of Biblical Literature all have pleasing to God. But then hold on to your seats, fellas, because Westcott and Hort and Nestle Aland 25 had to God pleasing. It's a textual variant that affects absolutely nothing. And that is basically the story for every textual variant that ever was. So the compilation of all of these manuscripts, and we could talk about like this might represent maybe 10 or 20 variants. Oh my goodness, how we get so many variants? Well, here's the big theological discrepancy. Do you want to say pleasing to God or to God pleasing? And by the way, Greek is a language in which you can say that both ways, and you wouldn't sound like Yoda either way. And so it's a very interesting thing to say. There are variants that are more significant than that, but you just look at this. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, through the mercies. Again, here he goes with the Yoda, and almost all of you even look at Society of Biblical Literature, Greek New Testament, it has oiktirmon with a Yoda. But here, in a manuscript that dates to 200, the way that they spell it is at least with epsilon iota, and maybe just epsilon. But continuing on here, of God, and that's why we had the theou here and the theo with lines over top of them, right? Coming in P46. To offer your bodies sacrifice, living, holy, pleasing to God. Okay, and that's how it looks in Scrivener's 1550 TR, probably other TR manuscripts as well there. Robinson Pierpont's or Byzantine priority, that's how it looks like even in the NIV text the base text that they use, as well as Nestle Aland. But Westcott and Hort and NA25 use to God pleasing. And like I said, that affects absolutely nothing. That you wouldn't even notice the difference if you translated that into English. You'd just have to say pleasing to God either way. The question is which way are the words flipped in English? One more time to review here. Again, now what I'm going to do is just we'll take the Berean Standard Bible and I'm going to link these up. So we have, I urge, therefore, I'm going to link this here. Brothers, I missed the U there. This really is inserted like this in P46 down with the line there. That's the U. Okay. Dia, they translated as on account of. The mercies of God. And that's an interesting choice there to keep the God's mercy, singular plural, is it God's mercy or God's mercies? Again, doesn't make a theological difference there. We have of God, parastesai, to offer, the bodies, to offer, got that wrong. To offer, and then your bodies. I'll link that together. Your is also connected there. And then we have sacrifice, living, holy, pleasing, there we go, to God, the spiritual service or the reasonable service, the reasonable worship. Okay, a couple different ways you can translate that. Actually, very difficult to translate. And then here is the your. And probably easier to do the multiple colors like I have in previous times. So maybe I'll stick with that in the future. Yeah, and I could have done that here, unfortunately. But hopefully you get the idea. This is my first crack at this. I hope you really enjoyed this. I could nerd out about this stuff all day. So go to csntm.org, go to P46, transcribe it yourself, compare your work with mine, tell me how you think oiktirmon was pronounced, and happy Bible reading. Aren't you glad that we don't have to figure out how to do this, but it sure is cool, and I love it. So hopefully I will see you on the next one. I look forward to continuing to be able to do this. Enjoy. See you later in the next one.